Got one more. Come on, YouTube. All right, there we go. Hey, we are live. Welcome back to Church Chat. I'm excited to be streaming tonight. Jumping into the topic of deconstruction, reconstruction, apostasy. We kind of ended the last stream by talking a little bit more about that. We're continuing the conversation tonight, and if we haven't met, my name is Matt, and I'm a pastor here at Fremont.Church, and part of what I do here is just hop online for open, honest communication, and that's our Wednesday live stream. So kind of have some topics prepared, like I said, talking about deconstruction tonight. But I'm open to rabbit trails when they come up. So, because that's always exciting. So we kind of wrapped up the last stream talking about deconstruction versus apostasy. And I think deconstruction is kind of more of the popular terminology. I feel like apostasy is more accurate when it comes to like people who have walked away from Christianity. Because I feel like deconstruction to a certain extent can be helpful. Now, if we say, well, I want to deconstruct this thing because I read something and that doesn't make any sense and now I need to rethink some things, we can give up and walk away, and that's apostasy. Or we can say, I'm going to deconstruct this and reconstruct it with something better. And that's not to say that like deconstruction leading to apostasy is always giving up, because it's not. There's tons of reasons why someone might be leaving the church because of negative or abusive situations. Jesus is coming. You better go grab him a towel. He's all over the place. Cool. Thanks for your comment. Appreciate that. How are you doing this Wednesday evening? That is gross. Thanks. Is it okay that I am a ball worshiper? Well, you know what? That's your choice. And a Bible mocker. Yeah. I mean, you are allowed to have your opinions. That's totally fine. I'm like 98% sure that you're being satirical, but since we're here, why worship Baal? Why mock the Bible? You know, when I deconstructed, what do you mean? You became an apostate on May 23rd, 2024. Discovering Bart Ehrman. What's the significance of that for you? The Gospels aren't even, or realizing the Gospels aren't eyewitness accounts. If they're not, then what are they? Because they seem pretty eyewitness to me. I mean, you have Matthew, who followed Jesus for a fairly long time. Mark, who was a disciple of Peter, so Peter was the eyewitness. Then you have Luke, who went around and interviewed eyewitnesses. And then John, who was an eyewitness. Why did my mom and local pastor tell me they were written by Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John? Probably because that's when in fact they're all anonymous. They can be linked. Authorship can be tied to the four of them. I believe Luke is the strongest tie of the four. And then we can kind of piece the others together a little bit more. Do you know Bart Ehrman? I don't, but you know what? Through the power of the internet, I will do a quick Google search, unless you can type faster than I can read, and you would just like to tell me. E-H-R-M-A-N. Bart D. Ehrman, American scholar. Here, I'll show you what I'm looking at. You can just watch his YouTube podcast. That will take a lot of time. Oh, and my screen share is messed up. Well, that's great. Let's go ahead and try to fix that while we're on stream. Can you summarize his YouTube podcast for me so that we can continue to talk about that? Let's see. There we go. American New Testament scholar. Research focuses on contextual criticism of the New Testament, the historical Jesus, and the origins and development of early Christianity. No, just read it from Google. Okay, that's cool. Well, let's check this out. Evolved from evangelical Christianity to atheism and agnosticism. Okay, so he deconstructed his faith and left Christianity, is what it sounds like. Was this an influential person for you? Faith eroded after seminary. I can resonate with that. That was a tough period for me. Questioning the Bible's inerrancy. That's a tough topic because... well, let's finish the sentence. Due to textual issues, and later concluding that the problem of evil made belief in an all-powerful, loving God impossible. Yeah, I think that's a problem for a lot of people. He's probably the greatest ex-Christian ever. Yeah, I guess he's kind of the reverse C.S. Lewis in that sense, who was an atheist and became Christian after trying to debunk it. Yeah, I mean, stuff like this is tricky, right? We're actually talking about the problem of evil this Sunday. And it's difficult. I mean, God lets us make our own decisions, you know? Like, at no point does he step in and say, like, I'm not going to let you do that. He lets us make bad decisions. He tells us we shouldn't make bad decisions. But he lets us make those bad decisions if those are the decisions that we want to make, you know? And the inerrancy of Scripture, that's a tough one because inerrancy is kind of a vague term. It sounds really scholarly. But when it comes to the contradictions of the Bible, yeah, there's contradictions. That doesn't mean that the Bible, like, isn't making one coherent point. It's just making the point in two different ways, two different perspectives on the same story. There's tons of different reasons why the Bible contradicts. But it is the same God, the same Jesus all throughout. And so that's tricky. That's tricky. Did you kind of like follow him when he was deconstructing, or did you read something from him and that led to you not believing in Christianity anymore? Or... I'm not here to debate, but just, you know, just curious. He deconstructed in the 70s, so probably probably not. I just watched his videos. What was compelling about that for you? Again, not debating, just curious. like how late John was written. Yeah, it was written a lot later than the other Gospels, and at least to me, there's a valid reason. That might not be important. Like all the different Gospels that aren't in the New Testament. Yeah, like there's additional accounts with less verifiable authors and stuff like that. Stories added later. Yeah, I think the Book of John has one where it's like, depending on the translation that you read, it's like, hey, this was added later, and we can't tell if it was originally there. I believe it's the woman caught in adultery, let he who has no sin cast the first stone. Yeah, I've always had a problem with that one because it's like, why wasn't it there? Why was it added? Is a better question. That's always been confusing to me. But I like that they were transparent about it. You know all this stuff as well? Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of my job to know, right? Like, it's, I have been through a deconstruction journey as well. And, I mean, obviously I'm sitting here on a church live stream. I'm a pastor, so you can kind of surmise where I ended up with things. Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing where I went through seminary, and 2/3 of the way through, I came to a point where I was like, oh my gosh, like no one can agree on any of this stuff. What is the point? There's so many different denominations, and none of them agree on anything. They all think they have it the right way, and yet, there's got to be something that I'm missing here. And so I spent a lot of time digging deeper and trying to understand, and I landed in a position where I'm like, I can do without 90% of the stuff that denominations like push on their congregations, because the Bible isn't clear about that stuff, and we shouldn't be making that like the number one priority, the number one thing that we talk about. Like, we should really just focus on the things that Jesus was clear about. When was that? That was a few years ago. Let's see. Probably 4 years ago, maybe? What year is it? It's 2026. Yeah. So 2022, early 2022 is when I finished seminary. So 2021, I think, was when I was kind of going through all that. That was kind of a tough journey because I had also recently gotten married, and was just learning how to be married and still going to school and wrestling with faith. And I came very close to quitting seminary and being like, I don't know if this is for me, because I can't like there's people much smarter than me that still haven't figured a lot of this stuff out. So like, why would I think that I could suddenly just magically figure this out? Right? I leaned into it, and I thought, well, maybe I first I started by understanding, like, why did people, or how did ancient Jewish scholars write? And that was a big thing for me, because understanding how they wrote and the poetic nature of their writing really kind of released me from a lot of things, because I think we approach the Bible in a very scientific way when it's not written like a science book, and it's not written how we write in the 21st century, and it's really much more poetic, what's the term, like, not philosophical, but it's written in a way that leaves things open-ended. Do I know Dan McClellan? I don't. But you know what? Once again, through the power of Google, we will find out. Hey, I typed in Dan and it came up. Let's see. Dan McClellan, or Daniel McClellan. He's an author and YouTuber, American Bible scholar, well known for his activities on social media, religious topics from a historical critical perspective, and he is Mormon, or LDS, is I believe what they like to say. The Church of Latter-day Saints. What is special about him? He's an active member of the Mormon.Church, but he speaks like an atheist in his videos. Yeah, I think, well, I'm curious what you mean when you say he speaks like an atheist. But to me, what that says is that he approaches things from a very critical perspective, which I think is good. I don't even know how he can reconcile between the two. Yeah, that's tough. I have some strong views about the Latter-day Saints just because I feel like they're very harsh and isolating, and they kind of twist the Bible to fit the Book of Mormon, and so like not cool with a lot of stuff like that. Personally, I think when you need to add on another book to the Bible that corrects things and changes things and says, well, this text usurps the previous text in a way that like the New Testament doesn't do for the Old Testament. Like the New Testament adds and the New Testament recontextualizes, but the New Testament doesn't say the Old Testament is wrong, right? It kind of expands on it. The Book of Mormon corrects, which is tough for me, and so I don't know about that. I think approaching things from a critical perspective is good. Like doing your research and understanding what was the historical and cultural context of what was going on. What can we reliably say and what can we not? And I think if we're more honest about what we cannot reliably say, then that adds validity when we say like, oh, we can reliably say this. Like in a video, he says, don't listen to some celibate guy from 2,000 years ago, and don't be a rape apologist talking of Paul. What does that mean? What does that term mean? Don't listen to some celibate guy from 2,000 years ago. I mean, Jesus was a celibate guy from 2,000 years ago, so, I mean, lot of religions kind of think he's a pretty important guy. So I don't know what celibacy has to do with it. Oh, he was responding to a guy. Okay. It's kind of tough without the full conversation, right? To kind of know what's going on there. It sounds like he has some pretty harsh stances on things. Not harsh as in like necessarily bad, but harsh as in just like very extreme, passionate stances, maybe. I don't know. Again, this is something that will probably require a much deeper dive, but since we're live streaming right now, I'm currently unavailable to be doing that research, but I mean, if someone said don't listen to Paul and was super critical of the text, would you consider him a Christian? Yeah, that's fair. You know, I think when you're talking about like him being Mormon, but also speaking like an atheist. That's tough. And I think I would venture to say that Mormons like to refer to themselves as Christians, but most Christians don't see Mormons as Christians because of the way that they twist things like that, and they correct the Bible with the Book of Mormon. It's kind of in its own category in some ways, and so I don't know if I would consider him a Christian anyway, but that is kind of more up in the air. He even made a video about that, responding to people who say Mormons aren't Christians. Well, I'm not surprised, right? I think it's probably something that, as a Mormon, they face frequently, right? I think in every religion, you probably have your handful of topics that you talk about frequently. In the Christian church, it's megachurches and systematization and different denominations and their ideologies, and it just all gets messy very quickly, right? But we all have our things that we need to address. I think I would definitely feel good about someone who was like, don't listen to Paul over Jesus, right? Jesus is definitely the authority over Paul, and I think a lot of Reformed Christians struggle with that in particular, kind of reading Jesus through the lens of Paul rather than Paul through the lens of Jesus. And I would encourage you to be critical of the text, right? I think it's good to be free thinkers, right? I think it's kind of like indoctrination to be like, well, yeah, don't think about it too deeply. Like, no, think about it more deeply. Like, the whole point in ancient Jewish literature was to be a little bit confusing so that people would ask questions and you would lean in a little bit, rather than saying like, well, I got my answer. He made a video about that too, like cherry picking. What do you mean by cherry picking? I'm not sure what I said that led you to cherry picking, but it is choosing Paul over Matt. Yeah, totally. Cherry picking is a big issue, especially one that we talk about a lot here, because the Bible should be one big cohesive story. Like, when we read it, everything has its context, its the origins of how it was written, who wrote it, who it was written to, like all this stuff that we should learn about, like to understand how it fits into the bigger narrative. And if we just cherry pick one passage, like, that's really only ever appropriate with the book of Proverbs, and really only the first 10 chapters of Proverbs, because it's literally just like kind of snappy one-liners and they don't have any context. But outside of that, like 98% of the Bible really requires a lot of context, so cherry picking is not great. What's my denomination? The church platform that I'm streaming from in our church is non-denominational. Me personally, I would take my denominational standing a step further and say I'm something that I call a-denominational or a-denominational. I believe that denominations are less helpful than harmful. I think denominations divide us unnecessarily, and we focus on secondary and less important issues, and why that makes us different, rather than kind of the 10 or less things that make us united as Christians. And I think if we just focused on like the things that Jesus was really clear about, then we would feel much more free in our faith. We wouldn't feel so constrained or so burdened. We wouldn't be seeing as much harm and abuse in the church. we wouldn't be seeing so much unnecessary debate. There's a lot of the Bible that like just wasn't meant to be figured out, because it's like it's not the point of what was being said. It's like you're saying, like, if we cherry pick something, then like we are doing ourselves a disservice. And really that's what happens a lot with denominations, is something gets cherry picked and they form a theology around it, and enough people come together on that thing, and boom, you got a denomination. And that's how every denomination has been formed, is by saying, well, actually, you have it wrong and I have it right, and so we're going to split. And sometimes there was like a vast majority of people, and that makes a little more sense, right? But sometimes it's a pretty even split between you're right or I'm right, and then the people who are like, well, I don't know. And so we kind of get caught up in this black and white thinking, and that's how denominations have evolved over time. And I think somewhere along the way we missed something really special. And so there's something to be said about some of those splits that like were kind of more like 90-10 splits and not 50-50 splits. That, yeah, probably helpful. Something like the Reformation, probably helpful, because we got our religion mixed in with politics. But really, like, when it comes down to everything else, like, man, getting over all those speed bumps of minute theological things, it's like I have no desire to debate about those things anymore. Like, once I was at a point in my life where I thought I had to figure everything out. And if we figure everything out, then what's the point of having faith? You know? Some things Jesus just didn't explicitly talk about. It wasn't the point of what he was talking about. And if we cherry pick those things and form a theology around it, really only does more harm than good, in my opinion. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I hope that that's helpful in knowing where I'm coming from. I don't think that there's a lot of pastors and churches who are in the same boat, on the same journey. Maybe in 20, 30 years there will be. I don't know. But I think at the very least a lot of people are starting to come to the realization that the way that church is done in America maybe isn't working. Church numbers are shrinking. There's more and more stories of people being hurt or abused, having negative interactions with the church, and it's past the point of like sad for me. Like, it's frustrating. It makes me angry that people are being hurt by the church. And so, like, it's not enough to point at it and say that's bad. Like, we kind of have to, as Christians, be most critical of other Christians who are doing the abuse. I talked about that a little more in depth on the last stream, but yeah, when it comes to things like that and things with like secondary theology that isn't helpful, like, we need to stop. We need to move away from those things, you know? So that's kind of my position, my stance in a nutshell. Oh, excuse me, in a nutshell. I can't tell if that was a burp or a hiccup. That was so weird. Anyway, yeah, that's where I'm at. I have some videos prepared to react to about deconstruction, and so I want to take a look. Grab my headphones here. Happy to keep this conversation going if you have more to say about it personally, but I want to take a look at this video from Preston Sprinkle. It's a short clip, and I think it talks about deconstruction well. But let's see. All right, it's not. There we go. Okay, we got there.
I think Richard Rohr talks about this as the wisdom order, the sort of cycle that we live in of self-evaluation and social evaluation, where you move from construction to deconstruction to reconstruction. I think you can get stuck in any of those phases. And I grew up in a tradition that could never move beyond construction. It was just sort of, this is the way that it was, and therefore it's the way it should be. These questions are dangerous. And so it's a lot of borders and boundaries and fence building and protecting and attacking anyone who might question the construction. One of the worst things you can do is move one stage over and then get stuck there, where you deconstruct, and then one day, you've gone from evangelical to Episcopalian to some avant-garde, something with, crystals on your mantle and talking about the universe. And then, everything has fallen apart and you've got like 2x4s and nails and nothing to live in. And it takes a lot of courage, I think, because it can be really triggering for folks to rebuild something out of that and say, what good is there in this 2,000-year-old tradition that might help me face the beautiful, terrible things that exist in this world? And so that's where I try to live, is moving through those constantly and realizing that even once I reconstruct my way of being Christian, it becomes its own construction. And so I even listen to some of my evangelical brothers and sisters who say, what about that? And that doesn't make sense. And you're doing this thing, but have you left this thing behind that might be good for you? So always being humble enough, even in my own posture, to be listening to the critiques from those who I consider to be behind me and those in front of me. I think that's really, really critical and healthy for the Christian life.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think that's good. I think when we take a look at that process of construction, deconstruction, reconstruction, I feel like the church is scared of deconstruction. And that's one of the major problems that we face, because we start off with construction and then we do more construction and more construction and more construction, and we build up that faith on all of these rickety, unstable Jenga blocks. So that way, when we finally get to something that doesn't make sense and we try to pull it out, the whole tower falls down, right? Rather than acknowledging that deconstruction is a healthy part of faith. And when we deconstruct in a way, when we have that Jenga tower, like, yeah, people are going to walk away from Christianity. Like, that makes sense. That is totally fair, because something was built up over time and we were told these are the most important things that you need to believe if you want to be a Christian. And they really amounted to, like, nothing. Like, it's not the point. But if we're told that that's the point, and we take those blocks out, and the world doesn't collapse around us, but our faith does, then it's like, okay, well, yeah, something was the matter with that faith, right? Something was not the matter with what anything that you did, but with the way that you were taught. And so we need deconstruction so that we can kind of remove some of those unhealthy, unimportant things and replace it with just what's the most important stuff. And I like that he was willing to say, like, yeah, I continue to listen to pastors and teachers and continue to deconstruct and reconstruct, because that's healthy, right? Because we want to believe in the most important things. We want to be confident in what we believe, and it's okay and actually even better to be able to say, like, yeah, I'm not confident in that, so I'm not going to speak to it, right? Because that adds validity to the things that we are confident in. So I thought that was really good. I have a couple more videos that I want to check out. I do want to hear, since we are over halfway through our time, I have one more video if we have time for it, but I want to check out this video from Mindshift that was posted a few days ago. Let's go ahead and share. This is Why Deconstruction Hurts, the Ache After Faith. I didn't get a chance to watch through this whole video, so I'll kind of just be reacting as we go.
For today's comment deep dive, I will not be responding to a Christian comment, rather someone who recently left the faith and is still struggling. This is what pulls on my heartstrings the most. This is why I started the channel. This is the goal behind every single video I make, to be able to help those that are doubting, deconstructing, or who have deconverted. And so I'm very excited to cover this with you because it is not a unique problem. Here is the comment. Brandon, as a recent deconstructionist, I've recently been struggling with missing being part of the Christian community. Even though I know logically it is false, I can't help but miss when I did believe. Have you ever experienced this in your deconstruction? How did you get past this, if so?
I think that's so valid, honestly. Like, I think, at least in my experience, what I've seen from people who have deconstructed their faith and left Christianity, they're like, man, I miss that sense of belonging and community. And, like, it is really frustrating that they got pushed to the point of leaving their faith because of all the other stuff. Because really, that community is like one of the biggest pieces of the Christian faith. And so probably without realizing it, they're touching on one of the things that is actually probably one of the things that should have been taught to them that was the most important stuff. But there's all this garbage that is put onto people's plates that is not the most important thing. And so, like, if we're saying that the things are still debated are the most important things, then we're saying that something like being involved in Christian community is not one of the most important things, when in reality it's the opposite. The being together, the asking questions, the wrestling, the uncertainty, that is important to our faith. And so people miss that for a reason, because it's something that America, as kind of an isolationist country, doesn't really offer. We say, go to work, go home, don't talk to your neighbors, don't go to any third places, like, don't have like these concrete communities that you can call found family. Like, it's just not a thing in America. And that's frustrating. And it's one of the few things that Christianity really does well, and yet we push people away. So what's the point? What did that amount to?
And from the username, I will assume that your name is Cassandra. So Cassandra, thank you for the comment. I can't make this go away for you. This is part of the process, not just for people that left Christianity, but for people that leave anything that is so core to who they are, who they were, what their identity was. What I can do is sympathize with you. What I can do is help normalize this for you. And what I hope to do is be able to verbalize some things here that will assist you as you continue to go through the process. You have done the hard work intellectually, but that doesn't mean that emotionally everything is just fine. And that really matters, because a lot of people, I think, when they think of deconstruction or they think of deconverting or changing their mind, it can be sometimes stitched together with this concept of they're figuring out the right answer, they're winning an argument. But deconstruction is so much more than that. It is a life that you lose, and then you have to rebuild. You are in that first part, but on your way to the second. It's time to rebuild. Now, I'm talking in generalities, and I don't know your specific situation, so not everything I'm saying is going to fit perfectly for you or for anyone else watching this, but I hope from a high level here that you can get some relief. The first thing that I would...
Yeah, I think the question is, like, are you rebuilding outside of Christianity or rebuilding in Christianity? Because I think we live in a very extremist culture that's very black and white. You're either with us or you're against us. And that's another thing that we have to, like, work to undo. That has been a big part of church history, right? And so if we can stop, like, pushing people away, then I think people will be able to have more healthy deconstruction, where they can deconstruct a specific issue that they have rather than deconstructing their entire faith and feeling like they need to walk away. And my hope is that if there are specific issues with a specific church, that people would then feel like, okay, well, I'm going to deconstruct whatever was going on here, and I'm going to find a healthier community that I can continue to explore and learn and grow in and find healing in, first and foremost, before anything else.
Encourage you to do is just change that framing. This is an opportunity. This is exciting. This is a chance for you to have autonomy and agency in your life. You get to build, you get to discover, you get to find, you get to say what's meaningful. You get to choose how you're going to orient yourself in this world.
And that should have been like taught to her all along. Like that should have been the point. Like that agency and exploring, supported by community. That's what Christianity should be. And it is entirely shameful that that's not the experience that a lot of Christians get.
It's not something that was handed to you. It's not from some ancient book or from your parents' belief that they held. Welcome to your life. It's terrifying, but it can also be so exhilarating. That's what freedom is. It's both of those things. And finding out the truth is freedom. It's freedom for your mind in a world that would otherwise want you to be enslaved. Be proud of yourself, first and foremost. Do you know how hard it is to change your mind? Do you know how hard it is to be open to new information? Do you know how hard it is to go against the grain? Well, actually, yes, you do. But maybe you haven't recognized all the work you've already done to get to this point. So again, I say to you, be proud and be excited.
Yeah, I agree. Again, from a Christian perspective, I have a bias of like, I would hope that this person finds a faith community again, right? But regardless of whether they do or not, like the fact that they recognize that something was unhealthy and they've moved away from that is definitely something to be proud of.
By the way, just a quick pause for anyone that is looking to this video for actual help and guidance because you are in the same spot as Cassandra. I have an entire playlist that has grouped together some of these matters, so I'd encourage you to take a look through that. Here's a few quick thoughts I prepared for this. The first thing that I want to say to you is that you are not confused. You are not weak. You are not fully deconverted, because many people do feel that way. They consider if maybe they were wrong. They start to question if this is worth it, or if maybe they're still kind of a Christian, or they still kind of believe. Those leftover fears and or new realizations about the emotional hardship that is now in your life can often result in that kind of thinking and even that kind of shame. And maybe you already know that. Maybe you are truly just saying, yeah, no, hey, I know it's false. Here I am, but man, it sucks. Yeah, sometimes it does. But missing community is not the same thing as Christ being true. Missing community doesn't mean that Christians were right. So I'm saying that because I want you to know that you didn't lose truth. You gained truth at a cost, and that cost is a lack of structure, a missing identity for a time being, belonging, ritual, certainty, and really importantly, shared meaning.
I will say, like, the one thing that's very dangerous about deconstruction and apostasy, like leaving your faith, is sometimes because you're so certain about Christianity, when those Jenga blocks come apart, the tower falls down. Ultimately, what ends up happening a decent amount of the time is like a different Jenga tower gets built up that's just the opposite of whatever was taught in Christianity. And people can frequently become just as certain about their lack of faith as they were about their faith. And so there's actually a surprising lack of openness sometimes, because I feel like that lingering something, if it's shame, definitely bad. Do not feel shame about deconstruction, right? But if it's a kernel of like, I might still believe this, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like that was the whole problem to begin with, was that like you were taught that perhaps that the whole bath was important, or maybe that the bathwater was the most important. But we don't want to throw out little baby Jesus with his little baby bathwater, right? We want to get rid of the things that are unhelpful, the dirty water that has been washed away, I'm going too deep into this bath metaphor. But like, we want to keep the baby, right? We want to focus on the things that are most important, and not the things that are not clear and not important. Because let's be honest, sometimes we were told that that's what was most important, and we often realize that it's not. And so I would be careful making big, sweeping, generalized statements of like, throw it all out, right? That's what freedom is. I think freedom is the ability to explore and to say like, I don't believe some of this stuff, but I'm not sure about other stuff, right? I want to take time. I want to see what I actually believe, rather than saying like, well, I'm not in the Christian camp anymore, so now I have to be in the anti-Christian camp. Like, that shouldn't be our way of thinking. And yet I think in America specifically, we kind of do that. Like, we do that with politics, we do that with religion, we do that state to state, right? Like, we see it all the time, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy.
I call that community, but man, I think there's something even deeper there. I miss that. You know what I miss? Just to be vulnerable with you, I thought about this the other day. I miss getting to pray for people. I miss praying with others. I see the harm in it now, let alone the fact that it did nothing in terms of what I was praying for. But
that's interesting. I would be curious to hear more about his perspective on prayer and how that was harmful, and if there was something specific that happened that was harmful. But obviously, the connection, it sounds like, is what he's talking about, is the valuable piece. And that connection is important.
But personally, the sense of connection, of shared meaning, hoping together, relying on something more than just yourself, that's powerful. Now, sometimes I have to give this caveat. Christians who watch will hear that and they will say, see, no, that's what I just said. Christianity doesn't just become true because sometimes in some very specific situations, it's kind of useful despite its harm. So just to get that right. And by the way, there's...
Yeah, I agree. Like, we should not be saying like, see, it's useful, or it's true because it's useful, right? But I think there's a nugget here for us to explore, right? Again, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's see what parts are baby and what parts are bathwater before throwing the whole thing out.
More than just that, that's just one that I've recently thought about, which is like, man, the intimacy I used to have with my family or my friends, when I really believed that when we bowed our heads and held our hands and spoke to the creator of the universe, something was happening. That was something. And there's many other somethings too. So part of your question...
And it does bring comfort to me. Whether or not you believe in Jesus, like, many religions consult a higher power for wisdom, for guidance, for assistance, right? Or just to feel heard, right? Whatever it is, like, there is a scientific study that believing in a higher power brings more peace in life. And so, not saying that as like justification for all the rest of Christianity, but just that, like, some of these things are baby and not bathwater. And so, like, whether or not you end up finding a Christian expression, church expression again, like, finding a way to connect to something like that is meaningful. It's a meaningful connection for people that society largely doesn't offer.
Question was if I have dealt with this, and yes, this wasn't just an easy thing for me. This wasn't just no skin off my back. It still affects me. Every single person in my life is a Christian, and having this channel didn't make any of that any easier. I'm with you. Those things that I listed, they are powerful psychological and social forces, and religion is very good at supplying them. If it wasn't, it wouldn't still be here. And again, I'm not speaking just to Cassandra here, but a pattern that I have noticed is that when people try to hold these two things, I know this isn't true, but I miss X, in this case, community. That's not the same thing as cognitive dissonance. That's grief. And grief doesn't really respond to arguments.
Yeah.
No intellectual victory or understanding of correct history can really mitigate that. And by the way, I don't say this to discourage you or to make you more afraid. And I don't know exactly where you are in your process or how long it's been or how long you were a believer, anything like that. But let me just say that sometimes this comes in waves. So even if you start feeling better and it happens again, it doesn't mean it wasn't really better. It doesn't mean you're not making progress. It doesn't mean that the rebuilding isn't happening. It's just not always linear. And some of my thoughts are just kind of coming in sporadic. And so I'm sorry if it's not more structured, but I just want to give you as much help as I can in this quick reply. I gave you the prayer example, but let me go a bit further just to really empathize so you can really know you're not alone. Anyone who is listening, even I, the atheist YouTuber who knows 100% how false and harmful this religion is.
See, that's where I have to stop, because it's like, not like stop watching the video, but like I have to pause, because you take something that you're 100% certain in, realize that parts of it are not as it was taught to you, and then you go again and say, I'm 100% certain that was wrong, right? And there's no middle ground. There's no area in between where we can just be honest and explore. It's like it's feeding into that black and white mentality. Definitely something caused by Christianity and religion and harmful structures, right? But it's also saying that 100% of Christianity and religion falls into that category is also a fallacy, right? Because you're saying you're speaking in grand absolutes that, oh, all of this is bad, and I'm 100% certain that it's all bad, like, and it's all the problem, when really, like, I've seen this church that I work at go through many seasons, and seasons of, like, what do we actually believe? Maybe we need to change our policies on some things, because, you know what, actually, we don't believe that anymore, and that was taught to us by so-and-so who learned it from so-and-so and the pastor before them and them and them and them. And it's like a game of telephone over 2,000 years since Jesus, that eventually we get to some stuff and we have the humility to say, like, hey, you know what? We got it wrong. And so that's why I love working at this church specifically, because we're willing to say, like, hey, yeah, we have a different perspective on this than we did 50 years ago. Or, hey, yeah, actually, we're not 100% confident about this thing, and so we're not going to make it the thing that we talk about. And so swinging the pendulum all the way to the other direction and being just as fundamentalist as an atheist, and saying, well, actually, now that is all 100% wrong, rather than being 100% right. It's like, man, where's the middle ground, the gray area of, like, yeah, we just don't know some things, right? That's the part that bugs me, is we so often swing to the other side when something goes wrong, rather than saying, like, let me dismantle this piece by piece. Like, it's not something that has to all be thrown away. And obviously there's still some redeeming qualities, and so maybe there's something that is on the right track, and maybe we can pull that thread, and whether it leads you back to Christian community or not, like, you can find some healthy ways that you can live and enjoy a peaceful life. But we'd rather just fight, and that sucks.
Still have these moments, little bits of sorrow. This is in addition to just the daily difficulty of being in a Christian community in general, as the black sheep of it all. But having someone tell you exactly who you are and exactly what your purpose is kind of a nice thing sometimes. And sometimes I miss that. It is hard work to construct identity, meaning, morality, and purpose.
Well, it's also part of the problem. If you're just, like, allowing people to tell you what your purpose is, like, yeah, if it turns out that doesn't align with who you are, like, you kind of have to build your faith, like, with structure and with guidance, right? And community. But structure is not even really an accurate word for it, but mostly with with guidance and community, figuring out what your faith looks like for you is important. Like, we should be encouraging people to do that as individuals in a community, and not making blatant statements of like, this is exactly what it looks like to be a Christian. Because then when that doesn't line up with like what you feel like you're called to, or who you are, I guess is a better way to put it, like, then of course we're going to get people leaving the church. Like,
on your own. Doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. Doesn't mean it's not what's real. It's harder, and sometimes harder sucks. I've missed being part of the group, the people that knew the lingo, having the same symbolic language. We are built to fit in, to want to fit in. And so when all of a sudden that's gone, that's hard. I don't get a lot of opportunities to sing together. Almost none, actually, anymore. I need to start going to more concerts. There's something very, very psychologically useful and beneficial about that. Mm-hmm. This channel has helped me feel like I'm a part of something bigger than myself, but that is another need or desire that I think a lot of us have. And by the way, it took a long time to build this. And I'm not saying you have to have a YouTube channel, but I'm saying that it might take time to regain some of these things, or effort or hardships to get there. And that's okay, but man, I get it. Even the idea that there was someone watching over things. I am I don't want to say anxious person, but I'm a very safety conscious person, and I'm highly and often concerned about the well-being of my children. And when they were still young, and I still believed, when I would get into these states and I would worry about their future, or I would worry about something happening to them, when I could give that to God, when I could just say a prayer and trust in Him, that sense of relief, man, I miss that. Now I've got to deal with reality. Now I've got to take full responsibility for every single thing in my life, whether it is my children and their well-being, whether it is my friends, whether it is my wife, whether it is my job, whether it is my future, being able to retire, finances, yet.
I mean, yeah, but also we have to deal with all that stuff anyway, right? Like, the problems of life don't just go away because we gave it to God. We just have peace knowing that, like, if there is a God who is overseeing everything, and He hears us and He sees us, then, like, we can trust that, you know, that He is going to guide us in our decision making. He's like our compass, right? He is not puppet mastering things and forcing things to go a certain way, but He is guiding us in our decision making, and He is trying to liberate us from pain and death and suffering. Like, there's a lot of good things that when we pray to God, it's not just like, oh, it's off my plate. Like, we still have to be involved in our lives. Like, and I think that's maybe part of the problem here.
All of it. You can't just give it up to God. Responsibility is absolutely a burden, and it's one that was placed upon another's shoulders. Once that person is found out to not be there and not actually be helping or handling anything, that sense of aloneness, yikes.
Yeah, and again, like, it is not wise to have a perspective of like, oh yeah, like, well, yes, like, God is in control of everything, but God is not just going to snap His fingers and fix your problems for you. Most of the time, we cause our own problems ourselves. And so most of the time, He just gives us the wisdom to stop doing whatever we're doing to ourselves, right? But it's never been like, oh, I'm going to give it to God, and then I bear no personal responsibility. That's not how this works. And if that's how it was taught to you, how that's how it works, like, then that's I'm sorry, that's wrong. Like, when Jesus talks about picking up a yoke, right? He's using a farming metaphor where essentially the yoke is what pulls the plow, and in short, Jesus is pulling the plow with us. He's not doing it for us, right? God is not just going to snap His fingers, solve all our problems, but He is jumping in with us. We're no longer driving It's not that we're no longer driving the car. God is just in the passenger seat holding the map, right? That's what Christianity should be about, what it should lead us to. And so it sounds like there's a lot going on here. This is the first video that I'm seeing for Mindshift, and so like I cannot speak to his story as a whole, but man, it just is really frustrating for me when I see people who are leaving the faith because of bad teaching and bad discipleship and bad experiences, like, and especially when it comes to abusive situations. Like, none of that is okay. And we as Christians need to be critical of other Christians, and we as pastors need to be critical of other pastors, rather than being critical of people outside of the faith, because it's not the problem of the people who were taught, it's the problem of the people who were doing the teaching. And so we need to encourage healthy deconstruction that allows us the wiggle room to reconstruct, and to say, yeah, I don't know some of these things. I'm going to hold it lightly, hold it up in the air with open hands, and you know, I'm on a journey, and I might land in one area or the other. I might believe this, I might not believe this, but that doesn't mean that I have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so that's kind of my view on deconstruction, reconstruction, and apostasy, which is leaving the faith. And so I hope it was beneficial to you. I'm going to wrap things up for tonight. But hey, if you want to have more conversations like this, scan the QR code or click the link, join our Discord server, where we can have these conversations and connections throughout the week. So thank you so much for joining us, whether you joined live or you're watching back on the VOD. We'll catch you guys on Sunday for church.